So at the end of my first year of teaching high school English in an inner city Houston school, I was on a mission. And that mission was to take a road trip to Lanesboro, Minnesota from Houston, where my college boyfriend was living and working as an outdoor educator, which seemed a lot cooler than being an indoor educator. And my job was to go and convince him what our years since graduating from Penn State had taught me. That for me, fate had shown that we were meant to be together, that home was wherever Mike was, and even if he didn't know it, I was going to convince him as such. So he had not given me any indication that this might be a part of what he was thinking, but mind you, our college relationship was not one where you were building a future together. We were buddies. We hacky-sacked. We went to bars together. We followed Fish on tour for a while one summer. It was that kind of college relationship, not the kind where you're looking for a forever after. But I was 22 years old and an absolute complete mess. I was looking for anything to anchor me. You know how science has taught us that the prefrontal cortex, that part of our brain that's responsible for decision making and impulse control, that doesn't fully develop until you're 25. So at age 22, I was the poster child for this research. I had failed miserably at teaching. I had students who were throwing books out of windows when I wasn't looking. In most of my classes, there were 40 of them and one of me. So I was completely outnumbered. How rude. And many of my students only spoke Spanish, and I really didn't know how to teach English. And so it was a total and complete mess. I was there as a part of Teach for America, so I was far away from the East Coast that I knew and was familiar to me. And I don't know what it was about Houston, if it was the heat or the humidity or the traffic or all the people or the fact that I was failing at teaching, or if it really had anything to do with Mike not being there. But whatever it was, Houston did not feel like home. And in that year after graduating, Mike and I were buddies. We visited each other. He came to Houston, I went to Minnesota, and I thought his life looked amazing. He was living in a dorm with other outdoor educators, and I swear they were keeping REI and North Face in business. It was like a real world for hippies, and I wanted to be a part of that. It was familiar. It reminded me of what we had in college. It's like he had recreated our whole life there, and I was like, I can become the high school English teacher in this little town. I don't know why I thought I'd be better there than I was in Houston, but I imagined that this is where I was supposed to launch my adult life with Mike. I didn't surprise him. It wasn't like I just rolled up to Minnesota one day, but I don't think he was really clear on the mission. I think he was under the impression that there were going to be several stops on this road trip, but in my mind, I was going for the summer and maybe forever. That's what I was thinking in my heart. I did not take this road trip alone. I had a dog named Max, and like me, she was a complete mess. And yes, I know that in 1999, it might have been a little confusing to have a girl dog named Max, but that decision-making capability just wasn't there. And I had decided that my first dog as an adult was going to be named Max, no matter the gender, and that's how she came to be. She was a stray and tried to run away from me several times, including just before this road trip when I decided to get her spayed, because it's a great idea to give your dog major surgery before you hit the road. And she tried to climb out of the back window of the car on the way home from the vet. And I don't know if she was so out of it or if she was just like, here's my chance. Like, I'm out of here. But whatever, she was my dog and she was with me. And I think even though I was starting to suspect that Mike was pretty ambivalent about me, he loved dogs. And I was like, well, once I roll up with Max, he's just going to know, like, this is his future. This is what he's been missing. So on this road trip, I have Max and I have my Rand McNally atlas. And for those of you who maybe have only grown up in the time of Google Maps, an atlas is a magical thing. It's a collection of maps. Mine was spiral bound, and I had a bright yellow highlighter that I had marked my route for this trip. My first stop was supposed to be a campground in Hot Springs, Arkansas, but fun fact, I'd gotten a late start, and you can't just roll up to a campground at like 10:30 and be like, here I am. So there was no place for me there. That led me to a pretty sketchy motel on the outskirts of Little Rock. It was like one of those low ceiling, blinking vacancy sign lights. And I get to my room and the lights don't work and the phone doesn't work. So I decide I'm out of there. That takes me on a hours-long odyssey through the Ozarks, and not the touristy Ozarks, but like the Ozarks from that show where you just don't know that there might be a murderer behind that tree. And it's late at night and it's raining. I'm on this 2-lane road and I'm chain smoking and listening to Ani DeFranco and Bob Dylan. And I am on my way to make this adult life for myself. I end up sleeping in my car in a parking lot that first night. And in spite of all of these road bumps, these speed bumps, I am undeterred. I am even more motivated to get to Minnesota, to get to Mike and start this adult life. When I get there, I pull up into his dorm parking lot, and I am ready to jump out of the car. I am so excited. Like, I am just like, this is it. He's going to see me, and he's just going to know. But he's approaching my car very slowly. And I realize in that moment, as I'm reading his body language, kind of like the slumped shoulders and like barely a smile, I'm like, he's not feeling this mission the way that I am. Like, this is a one-sided mission, clearly. And I was reading in his body language everything that he'd been trying to tell me for a year, and I just hadn't been able to hear. So I stay for a couple days. I pick many fights because I'm very sad and I'm very distressed. And I'm like, where am I supposed to go now? I thought I was staying here forever with this spayed dog, and now I don't know where to go. So after a couple of days, I head in the only direction that I know, which is east. And I end up at the Yabba Dabba Doo campground in Wisconsin. You may be familiar with such places. Like, there were more RV hookups than campsites, like a miniature golf course, a green water pool. It was real classy. And so I set up my tent between two RVs. I tie up Max in basically a field of mosquitoes the size of pterodactyls. Like, I was a really bad dog owner, and I tie her up, and I head to the Yabba Dabba Doo bar. Because I think if I'm going to figure out my life anywhere, my next steps, it is going to be in this Yabba Dabba Doo bar. So I go there, and the bartender is a pretty grisly-looking guy. Like, he's got this big beard, and it's not hipstery or ironic. It's just lazy and unkempt, and he's wearing a trucker hat kind of high, like you might at the Yabba Dabba Doo bar in Wisconsin. And so he gets me a Miller High Life, and I have my journal, because I'm that kind of road tripper where I'm like, I am just going to journal the shit out of everything that's happening right now. And by the second Miller High Life, he starts asking me questions like, you know, where are you from and what are you doing here? And I'm grateful to have somebody to talk to, so I'm chatting him up and thinking he's friendly. And by the third Miller High Life, he asks, well, which campsite are you staying in? For the first time in a year, I knew exactly what to do. I knew to leave that half a Miller High Life on the bar. I knew to grab my journal. I knew to tell him a campsite that was not the one that I was staying in, rush back, looking over my shoulder the whole way, worried that I was being followed. I untie Max, bring her into the tent with me, and I feel safe and secure, even though I slept with one eye open for most of the night, just waiting for the morning so I can get out of there. I keep heading east. I don't know where to go. And the first place that I can pull over and use a payphone, I call my dad. And I certainly don't tell him about the bartender, and I don't even tell him much about what happened with Mike, because I'm so embarrassed that I've been trying to launch my adult life and have failed miserably. And my dad tells me what he thinks, I'm sure, are two simple words. He's living in Pennsylvania. He says, well, come home. And I drive through the great state of Ohio that takes forever to get across, and I'm thinking about those words, come home, come home, come home, over and over again. And I'm like, what does that even mean? Like, Pennsylvania is definitely not my home anymore. I had put all my eggs in that Minnesota basket. That wasn't my home anymore. Like, where was I supposed to go? So that night, I splurge on a La Quinta, On the eastern side of Ohio, it's raining, and so I'm grateful that like Max and I have a warm place to sleep that night. And before we go to bed, I pull out that atlas and my highlighter, and I start making my route back to Houston. And what I realized is I was the one who was going to have to figure out my way home. Thank you.